بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته أجمعين ومن صار على نهجهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. As we approach the end of this month, there are a few matters that we need to sort of tie up. A few important matters, some which we may have covered before, but there still seems to be some confusion regarding them, and other matters that there are many questions revolving around. The first of those matters is what an individual needs to do who is not capable of fasting. By not capable of fasting, I mean an individual who has reached old age, and so it's not possible, it's unlikely that they're ever going to be able to fast because of their condition. Or, may Allah Azza wa Jal keep us all in good health, but there are those who may have certain medical conditions that as a result of them, they cannot fast because they need constantly to take certain types of medications throughout the day. For such people, what needs to be done is that for each day of fasting that they miss, they must feed one poor person. They must feed one poor person. Here I want that we pay close attention because we'll be speaking about something else similar to this as well. In this day and age, many people think that you have to pay money to a person for each day that you miss. And the question that I receive all the time, how much money do I have to give for each day of fasting that I missed? There are a few things here. First of all, why did you miss it? If you missed it simply because you were sick during during that time, but then you're going to recover, you have to make up those fasts. The paying or feeding the poor person, what you call fidyatu sa'im, this is for one who will not be able to make up the fast. Secondly, we just said it is to feed a poor person. So you cannot put a dollar value on it. You cannot say for each day I have to give $5 or I have to give $10. You have to provide one poor person, a different one each day, for each day you miss, with one meal, with one satisfying meal. If it so happens that in your locality there are people who are deserving, then of course that's where you should go first. Seek out those poor people and for each day you feed that person. If not, then you go out. Therefore, the value of that meal could be different. If you're feeding somebody in Africa, it's different than if you're feeding somebody in America, for example. Understood? It may happen that, a person has many days, and in the area in which they live, there aren't those people who are so poor that they can't find a meal. So I understand that you will send these meals outside, but I don't expect you to go buy a pizza and mail it to Somalia, for example. Right? What you're going to do is find somebody there whom you can transfer money to, but first you ask them, how much would it cost to provide one poor person with one satisfying meal? When they tell you how much it is, then you tell them, I'm sending you this amount of money, and I need you to purchase so many meals and distribute those meals. So it's a poor person that needs to be fed. We do not have the right to determine that money will be, better suited to give them. No, ya akhi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it clearly, فَإِطْعَامُ مِسْكِينَ. So when He says al-it'am, and there are different things, Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us about sadaqah in the Quran. Sadaqah can take any form. He tells us about al-zakat. Al-zakat can only take specific forms. And this is what amazes me. We find people now, when it comes time to pay their zakah, I know a needy family. I'll buy them groceries, I'll buy them clothing and give it to them. That's my zakah. La wallah ya akhi, your zakah didn't count. You have to pay cash for zakah. If you're a farmer and you have livestock, you have to give the zakah in the form of livestock. If you have crops, you have to give zakah in the form of crops. It's not for me to decide and you to decide how it would, what would be best. Except for the sadaqah, the general sadaqah or charity, you can decide. You want to give them groceries, you want to give them diapers, you want to give them whatever, because this is what they need. But there are certain things you and I do not have a right to decide. Kafarat and yameen. Allah Azza wa Jalla doesn't mention feeding and He doesn't mention clothing the poor for no reason. There's a reason He mentioned that. So we have to respect the Sharia. We have to respect the laws of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the first thing, fidyatul sa'im. So if anyone is in the position where they will not be able to even make up the fast that they missed because of their physical condition, then they need to feed for each day that they missed one poor person, one satisfying meal. The next thing, zakatul fitr. And it's amazing, still we have a confusion between zakatul mal and zakatul fitr. Zakatul mal is that 2.5% you owe of that excess wealth of yours. And we spoke in detail about zakatul mal before. Zakatul fitr is something very different. Zakatul fitr is what is due at the end of the month of Ramadan. So let's go through it very quickly. Upon whom is it an obligation? How is it that we give it? To whom do we give it? And how much do we give? And why is it that we're giving zakatul fitr? Let's start with the why. Zakatul fitr, as I said, is a type of, or it is an obligatory form of charity that must be given at the end of the month of Ramadan. The reason for it was made very clear by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Salawatu Rabbi wa salamuhu alayhi, طهرة للصائم من اللغو واللهو وطعمة." Pay very close attention. وطعمة للمساكين. And he also said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أغنوهم يوم العيد عن الطواف أي عن السؤال. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made it very clear why we give zakat al-fitr. We have two reasons that are given in this particular hadith. The first one is as a means of purification for the fasting person. You see, when we fast, let's be frank, we do not observe the fast perfectly as it should be observed. Still, although we're fasting, we may speak nonsense. We may speak indecent things. We look at things that we're not supposed to. We listen and hear things that we're not supposed to. This is human nature. So to compensate for those errors, to purify our fast of those things, indecent speech and so forth, the Prophet ﷺ made it an farada Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam zakat al-fitr. And the Sahaba said he made it an obligation. It's not a choice. It's an obligation. So these are some of the reasons why we give it. The second reason in the hadith story is طُعْمَةً لِلْمَسَاكِينَ. He said to feed the poor. And in another hadith he told us that we should, through zakat al-fitr, free the poor and the needy from having to have to ask. It's the day of Eid. You want them to beg on that day as well? No. Support them so they don't have to beg. I want to come back to that first wording of the hadith. طُعْمَةً لِلْمَسَاكِينَ. What is done by a great many Muslims throughout the world today is that they give zakat al-fitr in the form of money. I realize that there are some of the great ulama of the past who gave that fatwa. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, even before al-Imam Abu Hanifa, alayhi rahmatullah, had permitted that. However, with all due respect, and we don't show any disrespect to any of our ulama, we understand how great they are. However, we also know they are not ma'soom. They are not free of error. We believe that these ulama, when they gave that opinion of theirs, Allah Azza wa Jalla will grant them at least one reward, because of their striving to determine what is the most correct opinion and what is the most correct hukum or ruling. But they're not perfect. So we come back to the wording of the hadith and what the vast majority of the ulama has said, and that is, it is not permissible to give it in the form of money. In other words, the final recipients, the poor and the needy. You cannot say, here's your zakat al-fitr and give them $10, for example. You have not discharged your duty of zakat al-fitr. You have not. You have contradicted the sunnah clearly. طُعْمَةً لِلْمَسَاكِينَ. In other narrations, the Sahaba say that كُنَّا نُخْرِجُ أَوْ نُعْطِي طَعَامًا. They made it clear, we used to give food. Then they listed the types of food: wheat, barley, dates, type of dried yogurt, and zabib, raisins. They listed the types of food. They said, طَعَامًا كُنَّا نُخْرِجُهَا طَعَامًا. So, does not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and then the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in know better than anyone who came after them? Of course. So then, let's make certain that we give it in the form of food. You will notice in this masjid and in many other masajid, they put boxes out and they say your zakat al-fitr is X number of dollars. Let's leave this masjid out of the equation for a moment. Many of the masajid that I have been to, they put an arbitrary figure and then they distribute it in the form of money. I've asked myself, perhaps they did it here before, I'm not sure. But from what I am aware of now, in this masjid, and as well as in some others, alhamdulillah, after we had discussions, they put a figure of how much it will cost for a certain type of food, whether it be dates or rice or whatever. There's a quantity that must be given, and it is 1 sa'. 1 sa', it will depend on the type of food, what the weight of that is. If you're looking at a good quality wheat, 1 sa' is about 5 pounds. If you're looking at rice, it's about 3 kilos. Alright? And a sa' basically consists of 4 handfuls. By handfuls I mean when you put your 2 hands together. Not mine, because mine are maybe a little bit small, because we're looking at the handfuls of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A medium-sized man, an average-sized man. Not the Jolly Green Giant, nor the dwarf at the circus, but an average-sized man. Okay? 4 handfuls is 1 sa'. In the Muslim world, of course, what they do is they make something out of metals, so they just scoop it up, and they know what that sa' is. So this is how it is given. So I'm not sure, I'm going to be very frank with you, I'm not sure how they came up with figures here as to how much to give. But اتقوا الله في أنفسكم. You have to make sure that you know how you set that figure. I, for example, would ask overseas, because let's be frank, we have 1,000 Muslims. If they're all going to be giving zakat al-fitr, we're not going to find that many poor people here to support from amongst the Muslims. And zakat in particular, sadaqah, general charity, can be given even to non-Muslims, but zakah has to be given to the Muslims. أغنوهم عن السؤال يوم العيد. Is it the Eid of non-Muslims? It's the Eid of Muslims only. So even zakat al-fitr, like zakat al-mal, has to be given only to the Muslims. So I remember over the years we've been sending to Somalia or here or there, we actually phone, we find somebody whom we can trust, and we tell him, listen, tell us how much 1 sa' of rice will cost. When he tells us, then we set that figure. Some years it was $2.50 American, some years it was $3.50, and so on and so forth. This year, I believe if you're going to do it in Somalia, we have some brothers doing it from Vancouver. 1 sa' of rice, I believe, costs approximately $5 Canadian. I have somebody in Philippines, and there it's $6 American for 1 sa' of rice, and so forth. So anyways, when you see that dollar figure given to you, you can be rest assured, inshaAllah ta'ala, in this masjid, that it will be given finally in the form of food. It will not be given in cash. Is that clear? So inshaAllah ta'ala, you can be rest assured of that. So it has to be given in food. We know the quantity that has to be given. When can it be given? It has to be given before Salat al-Eid. If you did not give it before Salat al-Eid, you have sinned, but it is not waived. You still have to pay it. Okay? You still have to give that zakat al-fitr to the poor. It's like what we call qada, making up for something that you've missed. In the Sunnah, we find that the Prophet ﷺ allowed that we give it 1 or 2 days before the day of Eid. That is, it can reach the poor 1 or 2 days before the day of Eid. Now, you might be asking, but in this masjid, like a week ago, they were already starting to collect. Yes, but they have not given the food to the poor. You have to understand, because this is going to be transferred, the money is being sent somewhere else, people need time to go and make those purchases. If you're buying, for 1,000 people, 3,000 kilos of rice, it takes time for you to go and prepare packages. So it is sent, and then the packages are made, and then the day before Eid, or even on the day of Eid, it is distributed to the poor. So when you give it here, you're giving it and you're actually diffusing someone. You're saying to them, you act on my behalf, and a day or two before Eid, distribute this zakat al-fitr. Having said that, for us, since for the most part it's going elsewhere, make sure you don't delay. Please don't delay beyond tomorrow. If you have not found a way that you are going to distribute your zakat al-fitr, make sure you do it by tomorrow. Because if it's going overseas, remember that there are time differences. Some countries are 15 hours ahead of us, some countries are 10 hours ahead of us, and the time that it takes for the people to receive, and so on and so forth, and for all the arrangements to be made. You want that this food will reach the poor before the time of Eid, so the people are freed of having to go and beg and ask on the day of Eid. Alright, and I don't think I want to say too much more about zakat al-fitr. This should be sufficient.
Do they have local tax priority over the overseas?
Okay.
I'll mention that.
Zakat al-fitr, we've already said. First and foremost, you look locally. Okay? But zakat al-fitr is not to fill a person's grocery shelves. It's to give them, for each person, the one sa or maybe two. We don't seem to understand our deen very well. Okay? We think that you just go and give a whole bunch to one person. This is not how it works. We look locally, and we're talking about people who can't find a meal. Alright? If that is the case, we take care of them, and then after that we will look elsewhere. But always remember, al-aqrabuna awla bil-ma'ruf. Those who are closer to us in every way, whether it be through relations or it be through proximity, living near us, they have priority over people outside, even with our zakat al-mal. As a matter of fact, Imam al-Shafi'i alayhi rahmatullah does not see that you're permitted to take your zakah outside of the region in which you're living unless there is nobody there who is needy. And that is the correct way. Because actually we're living here. If we can't take care of people around us, then what good are we? We're only going to worry about people outside. Alhamdulillah, they have people also to look after them. Because what is excess, then it goes outside, bismillah. A third matter, the 6 days of Shawwal, we will speak about that a little bit more afterwards, but specifically for those who missed some fasts in Ramadan, and it happens more often to women because of their monthly cycle, because of postnatal bleeding, and so on and so forth. The question that arises all the time, after Ramadan is over, and I have a number of days that I have to make up, and I also want to do the 6 days of Shawwal. Am I allowed to do the 6 days of Shawwal before making up the days that I missed in Ramadan? Do you understand the question? The answer is, you are allowed. The answer is, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, you are allowed. Let me say something else. Although it is preferred to first make up what you missed of Ramadan, and then do your 6 days of Shawwal. But even if you didn't, it's allowed. And in some cases, imagine a woman who gave birth just before Ramadan, and her bleeding only stopped after Ramadan, and she wants to do the 6 days of Shawwal. She has not fasted Ramadan yet. Are we going to say to her, you can't do the 6 days of Shawwal? She was excused from fasting. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ, without specifying that they have to be immediate. So you're allowed up till the next Ramadan to make them up. Aisha radiallahu anha, إِنْ كَانَ يَكُونُ عَلَيَّ الصَّوْمِ, and she says clearly that I used to have days that I had to make up, and I would only make them up in Sha'ban, the next year, 1 month before Ramadan. That month before Ramadan, that's when she used to make them up. And some of the ulama said, we know Aisha radiallahu anha. Do you think that in between she didn't fast any nawafil? Besides that, al-qa'ida al-fiqhiyya, if you go to the fiqh, we are supposed to pray our salah on time, correct? The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said that the best and most beloved of deeds to Allah Azza wa Jalla is to offer the salah at its prescribed time. The time of Dhuhr, for example, if it starts at 1:20, let's say, it extends up to when? It extends, say, till 5 o'clock nowadays. Say from 1:20 to 5 you have to pray. From 1:20 until 5 p.m. you have to pray Salat al-Dhuhr. When the adhan is called, do we immediately pray the Fariḍah? No. Al-Waqt muttasa', so you have time to pray your nafila. So it's not like you cannot do a nafila before a Fariḍah. This exists in the Sharia. So although it is better to make up the days that you missed of Ramadan and then follow them up with the 6 days of Shawwal, except that if you fast the 6 days of Shawwal and make up your days of Ramadan. Later on, it is permitted because Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. The last thing that I would like to mention is that there are only a couple days or so left for Ramadan. Let's not slack off. I noticed in many places, on the 27th night, they like to complete the Quran in Salat al-Tarawih. Okay? So they complete the Quran and then the masjid is empty after that. Or they start the rest of the day's Tarawih, whereas normally it would have taken them an hour, mashallah, it takes them 20 minutes. They think it's the end of Ramadan now. If you finish the Quran, it's the end of Ramadan. Laylatul Qadr could still be the 28th night, could still be the 29th night, it could still be the 30th night. You don't slack off at the end. If anything, the intelligent one will pour it on even more at the end. So let's not slack off. Ramadan is almost over, it's not over. Let's continue to strive hard. Tonight still could be Laylatul Qadr. Tomorrow night might still be Laylatul Qadr. I have no idea. This year I heard some people say, Wallahi, the 26th night, the next morning, wow, I saw it was definitely Laylatul Qadr. And somebody else told me the 21st. As I said the other day, these are all hunches. None of us knows for a certainty. It may not have come yet. It may have. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make it that we benefit from it no matter whether it has passed us or it is yet to come. Inshallah ta'ala, we will not slack off and we will catch Laylatul Qadr if we have not caught it already. And tonight, let me remind you that we have a bonus, if you will. Number one, it's one of the last 10 nights of Ramadan and it's Laylatul Jumu'ah. Remember two things. If nothing else, remember these two things from me. Increase your saying, Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'afu anni, the dua for Laylatul Qadr, as taught by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to Aisha radiallahu anha wa ardaha, and also increase your saying of Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, as-salatu wasalam ala Rasulillah. Why? Because the night of Jumu'ah and the day of Jumu'ah, we are supposed to do more of that and do a lot of it, because the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam told us of many benefits. Even tukfa hammuk wa yughfaru laka dhanbuk. If you increase your salat and salam on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, invoking peace and blessings on him, salawatu rabbi wa salamuhu alayhi, he said you will be relieved of your stresses and you will be forgiven your sins. Do we need any more incentive than that? هذا والله أعلم. صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله.